guys, it's your girl Matt Cox here with MA Couture Crafting. Thank you so much for clicking on this video because this quilt might be my favorite quilt to date. Let's get into the Disneybound quilt. All my quilts have names and that one's called the Disneybound quilt. Disneybounding is a weird thing. It's got a weird name in English. It's been translated over from, I don't know what the original language is. I'll have to plop that in here, but it's called Disneybounding. And what it is basically when you think of Mickey Mouse, you think of a black top with the big two white buttons right here, and then the yellow shoes, right? Like that's Mickey Mouse. However, when I would Disneybound, because what Disneybounding is basically a way for you to show your fandom without actually being in a costume, because you can't wear costumes to Disneyland. So you can't put on a whole Mickey head and walk around and be like, oh, I'm Mickey Mouse. So a way that they decided to do that is to do something called bounding. And that would be to put on maybe a black top with, red pants and some yellow shoes. And then people who know would recognize that, hey, they're repping Mickey Mouse. If you were repping Daisy, maybe you'd have on a lavender shirt with a big bow in your hair and some white pants, yada, yada, yada. So it's like that. If you want to do Minnie Mouse, maybe you'll do some polka dots. And if you Google Disneybound, you will see all kinds of super creative stuff. Like people will do couples outfits and everything, or maybe they'll be Eric and the other person will be Ariel. It's cute. It's a thing. So I don't do that because my closet is not set up like that. So that is not how I express my fandom. I'm an arts and crafts girl. So I tried to figure out how I could bound, but still make it Disney. And I decided to do it through a quilt. So I did 100 blocks in 100 days. That was a different kind of undertaking. I don't know that I will ever, ever, ever do 100 blocks in 100 days or 100 blocks. I don't know. It was a lot. That was a big undertaking, but each block represents a different character. So you'll have to see it. I'll show you guys a couple of examples. I want to say that I've shown a couple examples on another one of my videos, but I can't remember what video that was. So I'll show you guys some more. And I did the 100. So it was all foundation pieced. And so that's what you'll see me doing after this. You'll see a foundation piecing video, and then you'll see me doing the back of the quilt, which I am so excited about. Let me tell you how I planned this quilt. So I saw the Kinship Fusion Sampler quilt pattern, obsessed with it. And it's a thing. Every year they do it, and they do 100 blocks in 100 days, and it's dope. I really want to do it in a monochromatic version, but who's doing 100 blocks in 100 days again? I don't know. Probably not me. So anyway, I saw it, and with the pattern, you get a printout of what the quilt looks like so that you can plan your quilt. So what I did, the first step was I went ahead and made a chart of 100 Disney characters that I wanted represented in my quilt. And they range from Pluto to, I don't know, Aurora to, just everybody. Black Panther, tons of Disney characters. So once I figured them all out, then I just started grabbing blocks and coloring them and trying to figure out which one was going to be which. And what I wish I had done is plan them so that the blocks were next to who they're, who's related in the movie. So like, for instance, for Aladdin, I would have liked to have had the genie and Jasmine and the magic carpet and Aladdin all in the same row. I didn't do that originally. I ended up having to swap them out, but had I done that originally, it would have saved me a whole bunch of time. But anyway, so that's what I wish I had done differently. But coloring this guy, another reason why I had to get the 180 pencils. I just didn't have enough pencils to really get an idea of what this quilt should look like. I was able to make it work, but it would have been better had I had this when I started. So anyway, listed the characters. Then I figured out which block each character was going to be. Then I had to sew it together, and then I sashed it. So my quilt looks a lot like this paper in that there's a white strip between all of my blocks. You'll see that some people omit the white strips and they just sew everything together. They call that, I think, the kitchen sink version. There's a couple of different ways to sew this together. But I went ahead, sewed all the blocks, sashed them, and then I checked them off kind of as I was going, which was lovely. Okay, and then what happened? Okay, so that's what happened. And then I got to the back. So most of my quilt backs are also pieced. I believe in a pieced back. What's touching your skin should be just as special as what's showing on the outside. I feel very, very, very strongly about that. But the back, I wanted to do something a little different. So this pattern is by Gnome Angel. The other one is by Sterling Quilt Company, the back of my quilt. And it's basically a way to do a big Mickey head. It's a pixelated quilt, which means it's just using squares. It's a way to do Disney, Mickey, or Minnie. You'll see. So check out their pattern. And I decided that I wanted to elongate it. I had to elongate it because of the dimensions are not exactly the same. So I ended up throwing some polka dot fabric by Tula Pink back there. My only issue with this quilt is that the polka dots don't line up, so it looks a little funky in areas. And if I had used a solid, it wouldn't have, but when you think Minnie Mouse, you think polka dots, and it's the back of a quilt, not the front of a quilt, so it's not that big of a deal. However, in order for you to really be able to see the bow on my Minnie Mouse head, I was like, wow, why don't I was showing it to a friend, and then all of a sudden I just started outlining it when I was doing a mock-up, and I was like, yeah, we're putting the lines in there. So that's when it got really fun, and I learned to use a double needle. So I'm a beginning quilter, I'm on my quilt journey, and now I can say that I have used the twin needles, and boy, did I enjoy it. I thought I was really doing something. So I show you how I thread my machine and how it looks as it is sewing. So basically I did some bias tape, I added some Fusible on the back of it, and then I went around the quilt and I appliqued down, and it's just like doing a stained glass quilt. I've seen people do that. I saw Rob Appel do it, and I wanted to try it, and this was my opportunity. And you guys, this quilt tickles my fancy. I mean, when I see it, I'm just all grins. I wish that I had sewn it a little more accurately, because I would totally try to send it to the quilt cons and things, because it is just special to me. It's a Disney quilt with all the characters in a weird way. So let me know if that's something that you would try, or if you think it's cool, or if your kids would like it, or if you would like it, because there's nothing worse than somebody telling me I'm too old to like Disney. Like, that's just ridiculous. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Go ahead and keep watching this video, and you will be able to see how it all comes together. All right, thanks so much. All right, let's get into this quick overview of how I paper piece this entire Disneybound quilt. I have this video over on my Instagram too. I know it's coming from a weird angle, but it was just a quick impromptu. So the first thing I do is lay down my first piece of fabric on the paper with a little touch of glue just to hold it in place. And then I trim it off to make sure that it's a 1/4 inch from the edge. I line up another sheet of another piece of fabric that I'm going to flip into place. And I sew down the line and cut the string and then flip it, and bam, it's in place. So then I give it a little rub with that wooden roller. And now after I do all my strips like that, I'm going to sew my strips together in the proper order. And we're going to just do right sides together. And we'll sew down that line again. And for these, I start off the line and go onto the line. And if you can sew on, if you can follow a line, you don't have to sew in a straight line, but if you can follow a line, you can paper piece. Foundation piecing is, I'm starting to like it more and more and more the more I do it. And there's so many patterns that I want to use now that require foundation piecing. And there you go. You see, I just sewed down the line. I've shortened my stitch length to, I think, about 1.4 because I can still pick it out, but it perforates the paper really, really good. And so after you do that, you just open it up and smooth it out, and then flip your next piece on there. And then you're just gonna sew down the line again. This is a really, really simple pattern here with nothing to match up or anything like that. And after you're finished sewing it, you just rip that paper out of there. Be careful because you can rip your stitches, but carefully take the paper out and toss it, you no longer need it. You should really be using the sorriest paper you can find to do this so that you can see through it more easily. And we'll just rip, rip, rip away. This is my least favorite part of paper piecing, but if you do this as you go, you don't have to worry about it at the end. And there's our finished block. That's Flounder. So now let's get to the fun part, which is, there it is. That's the applique versus without the applique. These are bias strips. If you want to see how I made my bias strips, you need to look at my postcard video. There's another one somewhere on my channel with making strips, but I just made some bias strips and then put some Fusible on the back of it. Here I am just cleaning up those little threads. They also sell this already pre-made. I made mine just a little bit thicker. I think I made mine 3/8 of an inch or maybe a 1/2 inch. I think these are 1/2 inch. But they make it in a 1/4 inch with the Fusible already on the back. Clover has it. And it's actually on the bias. This one is not on the bias, so it's not going to go around corners nicely. I'm just folding the edge down just a little bit to make sure that I don't have any raw edge showing. I didn't want any raw edges if I could avoid it, even though I was going over it. So now I'm just ironing down the Fusible. I split the difference, so it's laying kind of half on the polka dot and half on the colors. In hindsight, I probably, yeah, I like it like that. Half on the color and half on the polka dot. For 45-degree angles right there, I just cut it because I know that I'm going to cover that section right there with a finished edge piece. But you can actually turn these so that you get a 45-degree angle and then you don't have to worry about that being unfinished either. I did that for some of my strips. You know, we're just kind of learning as we go. And so I'm going to put another strip on top of that strip. And when you roll them, you've got to make sure you're pressing it as flat as possible because I don't have a luxurious sewing machine. So we're just kind of hoping and wishing. And sometimes it'll hit a thick seam and it'll tell on me. There's a sound that it makes. It's like, hey, crazy lady, what are you doing? So I'm just following the shape of Minnie Mouse and pressing down and heating up this Fusible. And okay, I want to show you how this sucker got threaded and what I was using to do this 2 needle. Bam, 2 needles. What? Can't see it. I hit this function here, which is my 2 needle function, and then I just went ahead and did a straight stitch. But you can do zigzag stitches and stuff, which is how I was doing it before. You actually thread the machine the same way that you usually do, except for you using 2 threads. So I have one that's this way, which is a little funky because you know that spools that are crisscrossed are meant to lay down, but whatever. This, I wanted the exact same thread, and I have 2 of those connecting threads, spools. So you do it the exact same way, and then when you get down here, you just split it. It doesn't matter which one is on which side, and it totally worked. Very, very, very fun playing with 2 needles. Before actually starting on your project, you should always do some tests, and this is me testing on a scrap piece of fabric. So that's just a straight stitch, and then I thought, well, what happens if we do zigzag? Can I do a zigzag on here? Turns out I can do a zigzag on here. There are a couple of different stitches that you can use. I saw a lady doing all kinds, but let's get into this quilt. So here I go. I'm just sewing down. Now, there's no guide or anything on here, so if you go crooked, it's going to show. And I certainly sewed all over this black line. I'm glad that I did 3/8 inch because I think these are split just a 1/4. So if I had been sewing on a 1/4 inch, I would have had to be way more careful than I had to be here. I prefer this way so that I don't have to be super careful. But it was fun. And when you get to these corners, you can't just turn the way you would with a needle, like drop your needle and then turn it. No, don't do that. So I went ahead and locked that stitch backward and forward, and then I came off the side here and I just turned it. So you can see that I'm kind of wavy with my stitches, but I'm not, you know, I'm okay with it. And there you go. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.